Welcome to Talking Point with Stephen Taylor. It's good to have you along, and today joined by the Israeli ambassador, Mr. Arthur Lenk. Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Stephen.
Good to have you here. I know that you travel around our beautiful country, South Africa. Tell us about, before we get into you, tell us about some of the experiences that you've had in South Africa, and the first time that you arrived in South Africa. What was your perception of this beautiful country?
Well, I have to say that I'm incredibly blessed that I get paid
to be here.
To be here in South Africa and to travel around Southern Africa and to talk about the connection between my country and yours.
Yes.
What a blessing. Well, I don't know anybody who's luckier. The first thing I did when I came to South Africa, the very first place I visited was Lily's Leaf Farms.
Where's that?
In Johannesburg.
Oh,
in
wow.
Rivonia.
I haven't even been there, see?
Right. You should, because it's part of your history.
Is it?
And the leaders of the ANC hid out there in the early 60s.
Wow. You know your stuff, eh?
Well, I've learned. I'm paying attention, and we're hiding out there, and the apartheid forces came and raided the place, and put many of them on trial.
Yes.
And interestingly, with the people who were arrested there were 3 or 4 whites. The rest were all blacks, leaders of the ANC, and all of the whites that were there were Jewish.
Wow.
And we're very, very involved in that history of South Africa. And so I thought that as a symbolic first thing to visit and to connect to my people's history here in South Africa as part of the standing up to the awfulness of apartheid. And my time, it's now been 3.5 years, started there.
Wow. So you arrived 3.5 years ago. When you got that call and they said that, Arthur Lenk, you're coming to South Africa, what was your first, had you been here before?
I had been here once before. I was here just before the World Cup in 2010.
All right.
And had a great time and met some people. I was here in Cape Town and I was in Johannesburg. And it didn't strike me then that that's going to be my next job.
Yeah.
But
where were you working then?
Well, I was working in Israel in the legal department of Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
And came here on assignment connected to that. And I went home, and about 1.5 years later, they published the list within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the ambassadorial jobs that were going to be open for the next year. And South Africa was on the list.
So you applied?
And I applied and put my name forward and lobbied a little bit and said, this is for me. Yeah. This is what I want, and I was blessed and lucky, and it's happened.
So how did it all begin for you? How did you start out being a diplomat and getting into service, public service?
Yeah, I studied law at Hebrew University in Jerusalem.
So you're a lawyer?
I am.
Wow, I should say the right things then, right?
But and practiced law for 1 year or 2 after passing the bar in Israel, and I didn't really like it. And I felt like it was
boring. No,
it was a little bit boring.
Okay.
And there was an advert in the newspaper that the government was looking, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was looking for young diplomats. And I don't think I really understood what it meant.
How old were you then?
I was in my late 20s.
Oh wow. Okay.
And
just a few years ago, right?
It's been a while. It's been a while. But the truth is, and so they had an admission process and all of this, and they took me in. And I'm the luckiest guy around.
Wow.
Since I've started. I was in India, and I was in Azerbaijan, and I was in the United States, and I've represented Israel at the United Nations. And they paid me to do all these things.
I know, that's amazing, hey?
That's great.
So you're always ambassador, or were you?
No. So my career, up until about 10 years ago, I was in more junior positions.
Okay. What are they
within the Foreign Service.
General or what? No.
Well, I was a first secretary, and then a counselor, and and you work your way up the food chain if you do things right.
So you have a consul general here in South Africa?
We don't have a consul general. We have a consulate at the embassy.
Okay.
So I have a consul who was on my team at the embassy, and a number of other Israeli diplomats. And basically, we tell our story, and we learn your story.
Yes, that's right.
And hopefully provide a bridge of conversation, of understanding, of cooperation between Israelis and South Africans.
How is that relationship?
Well, it's really interesting that there are a lot of things that we do that are relevant for you, and there are some things that South Africa does real well, including your history, including your legacy of making peace. The idea that you talk and you negotiate and you compromise and you make peace. That's a legacy for the whole worord, isn't it?
It is. I mean, if we look at people like Mandela,
that's right.
Did you ever meet him?
I didn't, but I wrote an article right after he passed away about how I felt like, even though I never met him, but by being in places that he was, and by taking in his South Africa, that I think like everybody else have a little bit of Mandela inside of me.
Yes. But you met somebody, sorry to cut you, but you met somebody who they say was very much like Nelson Mandela, Shimon Peres.
That's right.
Tell me about that experience, working alongside him, meeting with him, and getting to know him.
Well, both Shimon Peres and Nelson Mandela were Nobel Prize winners, Peace Prize winners.
Did Peres also win the Nobel Prize?
He did.
Oh, wow.
He did.
Okay.
Together with the late Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and with Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian, for an attempt to bring Israelis and Palestinians together to make peace. And so they won in, I think, 1994.
Yeah.
And Madiba won as well. And so South Africa and Israel, we were both blessed with these kind of leaders, with elders who not only told us what they think we want to hear, but where we need to go.
Yes, that's important.
It is important. Not that they were perfect. Neither of them were perfect. But both of them understood their leadership role of living with another. Like, for example, one of Mandela's greatnesses, he could have, after being in prison so many years, been angry and bitter and saying,
retaliated. Yeah.
Saying, whites, look what you did.
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
Get away.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. But he looked at his own constituency, by the way, all South Africans, and said, we need to go in a different path. Peres did much the same by saying, he could have said that the way we understand the Bible, all of Israel is mine.
Yeah.
Like Palestinians would like to say, it's all theirs.
Yeah.
But what he said as a leader is, open your eyes. You have to live next to your neighbor, not instead of your neighbor.
And love thy neighbor.
And that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And let's try to find a way. And it might not work. It might not be possible. It might not be perfect.
But let's try.
But you have to try.
Yeah.
And when leaders lead and take us in a direction, that's good. That's something special. We don't have that all the time in countries. Yeah. And in our modern world, when you have the blessing of having these years with a Peres or a Madiba, that's a very special thing for a country.
When was the first time that you met Peres?
I met him for the first time when I just started at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs as a young diplomat, because he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs then.
Oh, right. Okay.
And in the early 1990s.
So you worked closely with him then?
I didn't work incredibly closely then, but I met him a number of times and was inspired. But then when I was ambassador in Azerbaijan, he had become the president of Israel.
Wow.
And he made his first visit, a state visit from Israel to the Muslim country of Azerbaijan.
To where you were.
And I was the ambassador there, and went on the airplane and welcomed him and hosted him on behalf of the State of Israel. It's still the number one day of my diplomatic career.
Really?
That day in June of 2009, that Peres came to this Muslim country bordering Iran. Right? Iran's a tough country for Israel. A complicated issue.
The first time that an Israeli
the first time an Israeli president had ever come to Azerbaijan and was welcomed with honor and friendship and with peace, and that I got the chance to play a little role in that history it was a moving moment.
So what is the difference between the President of Israel and the Prime Minister? Because one is more ceremonial and the other one is more political.
Right. The political, different than South Africa, right? In South Africa, the President is the elected leader.
Yes.
In Israel, the Prime Minister runs the government.
Okay.
And we have a President who is formally the head of state. India is the same way, like Israel in this way.
Yes.
The UK is also similar in that they've got the Queen.
Yeah.
Who has that ceremonial role, and the Prime Minister, like in Israel or in India, runs the government.